All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today we're going to be reviewing Wolves of the Calla, book number 5 in Stephen King's Dark Tower series. Now, if you've been following my channel, you know we've been reviewing every Stephen King book in order of publication. We are now to Wolves of the Calla, which came out in 2003. You know, book number 4, Wizard and Glass, was published in like 1993. So there was about a 10-year wait between books 4 and 5. That's probably why I liked this book a lot, is because I did anticipate it for quite some time. Now let's talk about the covers, because you know we always review the covers first. We've got the hardcover, the first edition hardcover version, and then we've got the latest mass market paperback. And they're both pretty dope covers, and we're gonna go over those a little bit first before we get into the meat of the story. So I love graphic design, I love cover illustration. So let's talk about the hardcover first. This has got a really, I love everything about this one. This has got a really great Bernie Wrightson cover painting. The font that they used for Wolves of the Calla is super cool. The font they used for the Stephen King is great. It all just fits together great. It's got this keyhole, and then on the spine we've got a repeating keyhole with the same fonts to mirror. You know, they mirror perfectly each other. Then on the back side we've got some Stephen King photos, a young Stephen King and a middle-aged Stephen King. Now we need a third photo over here of a much older Stephen King, because this was probably taken about 20 years ago. Anyway, not only that, this book gets even more super cool. It's got illustrations throughout. It's got a shitload of illustrations, and they are all great, and they are all done by Bernie Wrightson. And I'm not going to show you them all because there's a ton of them, but believe me, they're there and they are all awesome. So thumbs up to the publisher for the hardcover version. Now let's look at the most recent mass market paperback versions. These were done by, now the entire series was put out again in this new mass market paperback size with new covers by Tony Morrow, and they are also cool. I like these. Oh my gosh, that's just really eye-popping color. It wraps around, and if you'll notice on the back there's this big painting. Now if we take our camera down here, I've got all of the mass markets down here in a row, and as you can see, that painting that's on the back side here actually is, and if we put this one right here in line, it all makes one continuous painting through all of the books. I just thought I'd show you that because it was cool, because I collect hardcover and mass market paperbacks. And I also collect the Audible.com versions of every Stephen King. I collect 3 different types of versions of every Stephen King novel. And the Audible.com version that I listened to was read by George Guidall. He did a great job. Now this book is dedicated to Frank Mueller, who was the Audible reader of the first 4 books in this series. It's just a little Wikipedia. Actually, it's not in Wikipedia. It's in the actual foreword. It's actually the foreword to the novel that Stephen King dedicated this book to Frank Mueller, because he was the guy that narrated the first 4 Dark Tower books, and then he suffered a serious accident and his voice was forever changed. An accident that actually hurt his throat, and he could not read for Audible.com anymore. So Stephen King dedicated these books to Mr. Frank Mueller. And I just thought I'd bring that up because I thought it was cool. See? Dedicated to Frank Mueller. That's just an aside. Let's talk about the book itself. The book starts out in a Old West slash supernatural slash alternate universe farm town called Bryn Sturgis. And there's some weird things going on there. There's Father Callahan shows up from Salem's Lot. And then within just a few moments, some of our main characters get whisked away to 1977 New York City, an alternate universe New York City. It's Jake, Oy, and Eddie get whisked away back in the New York groove, or so they say. Actually, that's an Ace Frehley song. Back in the New York groove. Anyway, it's actually mentioned in the book. That's why I bring it up. Anyway, they're back in the New York groove, 1977, an alternate universe, 1977. And they end up in a bookstore. And the bookstore is run by this guy who seems to know a little bit more about things than he should. And there's a lot of books in there, like Charlie the Choo-Choo, who plays a big part in the first 4 books. They notice there's a book about Charlie the Choo-Choo in the bookstore, and it's written by Claudia Bachman, who, if you know, is Richard Bachman is the pseudonym that Stephen King writes under when he doesn't want to write under his own name. I mean, we've got some Bachman books back here. Blaze, we've got Thinner right there. They're all Bachman books written by Stephen King. Well, Stephen King had this fictional wife. Richard Bachman had this fictional wife named Claudia Bachman. Anyway, the book back to was written by Charlie the Choo-Choo. That's just kind of an inside joke, an inside Stephen King universe joke. Anyway, but they also notice there's some books written by Stephen King himself. Hints for the future of the series, by the way. Hints for the future of the series. And then we get a callback to book number 2, where a lot of the mobsters that made book number 2 such a cool book and one of my favorite books in the series start to show up. They make an appearance in the story. I won't get into that too deeply, but this book, Wolves of the Calla, is it's 1,000 pages, literally 1,000 pages of just nonstop Stephen King, Dark Tower weirdness. And I absolutely loved it. Because if you saw my review of Wizard and Glass, that's probably been my least favorite book of the series. But it really, really ramped up with this one because we got back into the area of the story where I really love, which is just, and part of it was the mobsters and the chasing around New York City. And then all of the things that happen in New York City and the adventures and the mysteries they're trying to solve while they're there with the gunslinger and these mysterious books. And then we and not only that, but the whole novel includes the wolves of the Thunderclap, who the robot, Andy the robot, claims that the wolves of the Thunderclap will come by every once in a while and steal a child. Or so he says. So that's looming over the story. And then we've got Father Callahan from Salem's Lot. And Father Callahan probably has more dialogue in this book than he had in Salem's Lot, for sure. And a lot of what we get in this book is him reminiscing about his times in Salem's Lot and when he fought the Barlow and those guys, the vampires, and how traumatic it was, and how he could, because of those experiences, now he can sort of differentiate between what types of vampires or what types, and there's a type 3 vampire that he can figure out if a dude is a type 3 vampire. And we get a lot of Father Callahan's backstory and a lot of tie-ins to the Salem's Lot book, which is cool because Salem's Lot is one of my favorite Stephen King novels. In fact, it's the first Stephen King novel I ever read. So I really enjoyed those callbacks. And then it gets even better and weirder. Harry Potter is mentioned, Star Wars is mentioned. Bits and pieces of Harry Potter and Star Wars show up, like snitches and lightsabers. We even have plate throwing women who can throw plates like ninja stars and slice people's heads off. It's that bonkers. It's just so cool. And then towards the end, we get more hints of Salem's Lot, Father Callahan, and Stephen King himself. Now, it's just hinted at this book that Stephen King the characters in these books are now aware of the man Stephen King, which is weird because Stephen King wrote these books. So now we're left. Well, that was a little bit spoilery. I'm sorry. I should have said spoiler right there. The end part of it is, will Stephen King himself show up in future volumes of The Dark Tower? And we shall see. We shall see. I give Wolves of the Calla 9 out of 10. It's one of my favorite Dark Tower books, and it's part of the Stephen King universe. Actually, it's one of the books that ties all of the Stephen King universes together, with the Crimson King. I've got my Crimson King shirt. I don't know if you can see the Crimson. Anyway, all hail the Crimson King, folks. All hail the Crimson King.